would be an idea. So if you ask the question about fundraising events, okay?
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me some of the fundraising events you held?
One of the fundraising events we decided would be a good one was growing pumpkins and selling them. And it was a good idea because we could start them in May and then water the pumpkins over the summer and then sell them in October. So we had a harvest sale every October, and all the classes participated in watering and growing the pumpkins, and the classes also participated in making crafts. And so everything was made from, you know, little pictures of flowers to pottery to candles to dyed fabric that was then made into eye pillows made with lavender from the garden to, you know, it got very elaborate or very simple depending on the teacher. And we would make some pretty good money, at least we thought it was pretty good money. And Susan Reynolds was actually asked to go to Washington, D.C. to speak at a children's symposium on children's gardens. And it was for teachers, and I went with her, and she did a whole presentation on funding a garden through Pumpkin Patch. So it worked. It wasn't enough. The PTA really supplemented, and with the two funds, it worked out great.
What was it like going to Washington, D.C.?
It was an adventure. They already had established children's gardens there, and they took us to one of the gardens that they had in one of the public places, and they had, it was very well done, very well organized, very educational. They had like a weather station, rain gauges, and things that measure the wind, and a sundial. And so those were things that the ideas we took back with us and incorporated that into our garden here. We met a bunch of other teachers who had gardens at their schools, and so we shared ideas and kept corresponding with them. We found out great places to order organic seeds, and it wasn't really well known back then where you could get those kinds of seeds, especially heirloom seeds. So it was just a very good resource and a good source of inspiration, and it kept people convinced that, yes, this was a good idea.
Can you give me tell me some specific experiences that you had in the garden?
I have so many experiences in the garden. I love taking out the younger kids because it was magic to them, and just to see their eyes light up when, you know, they pulled a carrot out of the ground or a radish, it was like magic, and they would laugh and eat it, and they thought it was the most delicious carrot they'd ever had in their life. And same thing with lettuce. There aren't too many kindergartners that I know of who love lettuce, but if they grew it themselves, they thought it was the most delicious lettuce. And we'd make salads out here, and they would just gobble it down, and their parents couldn't believe it, but we have pictures of it. Other experiences would be just taking out classrooms where some of the kids didn't speak English. And Ed McGuire attracted a lot of kids coming from foreign countries whose parents were working at the monastery. And so they didn't speak a word of English, but when you got out to the garden, it was sort of a leveler. And because they could see what I was showing them to do, and they could do what I was showing them, and they did great. And where some of the English-speaking kids may not have been paying attention to me, because they could hear me, and they wouldn't be doing what I'd asked them to do. So it was nice to have those kids feel like they were doing something really well.
Can you share some stories of some memorable moments in the garden?
We had garden work parties continuously because we didn't have maintenance people, and we didn't have funding for that. So we would call parents and have them call parents and have them call parents and have them come on a Saturday. We'd have a barbecue. We'd have some dads who had weed whackers, and people would come with their garden gloves and their dirty clothes, and everybody would participate. And it would start at 8 in the morning and it would end at about 5:30 at night. And so it was a continuous stream of parents coming in, and I would be amazed that it just never let up. People were just flying through, and even if they just had a couple of hours, they would feel like it was really important and part of their duty to participate. And so the garden would go from sort of a shabby mess in the beginning with long grass to like this pristine, gorgeous, manicured English garden by the time our work parties were done. And I would just stand and look at it and cry because it's like, wow, this is what a group can do. I'd go home and I'd take like a 2-hour bath in hot water because I was sore and tired. But we had work parties maybe once a month, once every 2 months if needed. And it was just so gratifying.
Are there any other stories that you can tell me about in the garden?
Yes, I'm sure I can come up with some more stories. I don't know if I can tell you all of them. The kindergartners, again, and the first and second graders and third graders too, just loved being out here, and it was a real treat for them. And they always wanted to use these dangerous tools that were bequeathed to us when the disabled adults were using this garden. And there were these Japanese weeders that were quite sharp and pointed and vicious looking. And they were in the shed, and of course the kindergartners always saw them, and they wanted to use them. And I didn't want to discourage them. So I'd say, you may use this very carefully, and I showed them how. I said, but if I see that you're not handling it quite well enough, I'll have to take it away from you, but nothing that you did wrong, you're just not ready for it yet. And the kindergartners would handle those tools beautifully. They used them so carefully, and they were so proud of themselves for doing a good job with them. I never had to take one away from anybody. But I would never, ever offer that to the 5th graders or the 4th graders. They were just too rambunctious and too excited to be out here, and they became swords and other types of weapons. So you may have to delete that story. And the teachers didn't know this was happening, but they trusted me. And it worked. It worked. Nobody ever got hurt under my watch. I hammered my thumb one time and had to have surgery on it, but that was the only thing that ever happened.
So what part of the garden do you still see here that you were an integral part of?
All of it, actually. There's some new things that I didn't do, but there's constant maintenance. So starting at the gate, I had people work on the gate to make sure that it would open properly. It was falling apart at one point. And then as you walk in, the entrance garden is still there, where the roses are. And as you go past that, I took care of this shed. I got electricity to the garden the last year I was here. And so we got the greenhouse in, and we got some electricity in here. I see they've done it properly now in order for the electric tools and things like that. The apple orchard was put in my last year I was here. I realized that if we didn't put in something permanent, that this garden was going to be taken over either by Friends of the Fields who want to extend their soccer field, or by a classroom or something else. So me and a couple of other people had this idea to put in something like apples, and it was sort of a wonderful idea because apparently this area had been apple orchards a long, long time ago. And we found that out when we asked an apple expert from Sebastopol to come down and advise us on how to plant the apples and what kind of drainage we should have, because the water table was very high. And he convinced us to put in French drains and gave us a plan for it. And then we ordered all these antique apples that you don't hear of in the grocery store, with very fancy long names. And we had the kids come out and plant the whips. And here it is. It's a growing apple orchard. So I'm glad we did it, because I think it would have been a choice of many to occupy that space had we not.
Yeah. They mentioned something about a famous apple person that you brought in.
Yes.
Do you remember his name?
No, but Jim Pettigrew located him, and yeah, I'll have to think of his name. He was a wonderful source, very giving of information, and we hired him to come down here because it was quite a haul from Sebastopol, but we contacted him several times afterwards, and he was very, very helpful. People love children's gardens. They all want to participate. I think it's something that they realize is really important. It creates great values for these kids, and it's a great way to learn.
So what do you think of the garden now? Going into under construction and changing and
Well, it's changed, you know. There's some wonderful things going on here. I hate to see it get smaller. I know the front has to go away. But I think kids will still enjoy coming out here and doing what they can do. And I think it's maybe extending in another direction, so maybe the space will be recouped. But you just can't take away the joy of somebody learning through gardening. That'll continue. So in that regard, it's going to be fine.
is there anything else that you want to, like, something special or anything that you want to add?
Can you think of anything? Oh, the grape arbor. Oh. After returning from Washington, D.C., Susan Reynolds and I wanted to imitate this learning garden that they had. So I wanted the kids to have a place to sit and draw. And there was no shade out here. There were no big trees or anything. So we had the idea of putting in a grape arbor with seating and then growing grapes in Mill Valley, which is sort of a crazy idea, but it works, especially if you get the right kind of grape. And so that became a little wonderful place to go when it got hot, and they would take their little notepads in there and draw or do whatever the assignment was for them at the time. And it was designed and built